Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found us. This is the place where we share powerful, real-life stories of betrayal, heartbreak, personal growth, and everything in between. We dive deep into the human experience, and I'm here to narrate stories that resonate with all of you. I thought my life was perfect until I discovered my wife's affair. I always thought I was living the dream. My name is George, and for the past decade, I'd felt like the luckiest guy in the world. Rebecca, my wife, was everything I had ever wanted. We met in college, quickly became inseparable, and after a few years of dating, we got married. We shared the same vision of life: a cozy house, a stable career, maybe a couple of kids in the future, and plenty of travel before that. We built everything together, step by step, and it felt perfect. I had a great job at a tech company. I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable. I worked hard, put in long hours, and was happy to do it because it meant a better life for both of us. Rebecca had a job in marketing, but her schedule was more flexible, so she often had the time to do things around the house. It felt like the perfect balance. She supported me when things got tough at work, and I supported her when she was feeling overwhelmed. Every day felt like another little piece of happiness added to the pile. Our weekends were spent hiking, or having dinners with friends. We'd plan spontaneous getaways, sometimes just the two of us, other times with friends or family. I couldn't remember the last time we'd fought seriously. Of course, we had disagreements, but they never lasted long, and we always found our way back to each other. For a while, things seemed to be on track. We had been married for nearly 10 years, and things were great, or so I thought. There were a few big milestones that had already come and gone: buying our house, our first vacation abroad, and even starting discussions about having kids. We had talked about trying for a baby in the next year or so, but we hadn't made any concrete plans yet. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. At first, it wasn't anything I could really put my finger on. Rebecca started spending a little more time out of the house, going for drinks with her friends, particularly her old college buddy, Lisa. I never thought twice about it at first. After all, Rebecca had always been social, and I trusted her. But over time, I noticed the small things. When she came home late after these girls' nights, she seemed distant. Her mind was elsewhere, and when I tried to ask about her evening, she would give me these vague, one-word answers. It wasn't that she was being intentionally cold, she just wasn't quite there. The usual warmth in her voice, the affection in her touch, all of it seemed like it was slipping away. At first, I thought maybe she was just stressed at work. It made sense. She'd mentioned a few times that she was dealing with a lot on her plate, and the thought of her being overwhelmed crossed my mind. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake this nagging feeling in my gut that something was wrong. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself that it was all in my head. I knew I had no right to complain. We had a good life, and she had every right to go out and have fun with her friends. But every time she came home late, or when she seemed distracted in a conversation, the unease grew. It was subtle at first, but over time, I couldn't ignore it. I should have seen it sooner. That was the first mistake. I let the small cracks grow unnoticed. And I couldn't help but wonder if Rebecca had started drifting away from me. Had I taken her for granted? Was I too caught up in my own world to notice the signs? The thoughts swirled in my head, but I kept brushing them off. I wanted to believe that everything was okay. That is, until one evening when everything changed. In the weeks that followed, Rebecca's behavior didn't improve; if anything, it worsened. At first, I still gave her the benefit of the doubt, chalking it up to work stress, or maybe just needing a little space. But as time went on, I couldn't ignore the growing distance between us. The late nights out with Lisa became more frequent. I told myself it was harmless, that she was just catching up with an old friend. But even when she wasn't out with Lisa, she seemed preoccupied. It was like she was there, but not really there. I tried to talk to her about it once, but the conversation didn't go as I had hoped. "Is everything okay, Rebecca?" I asked one evening, sitting beside her on the couch as she stared at her phone screen without really looking at it. She glanced up at me, offering a faint smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, everything's fine. Just tired from work, she said, her tone dismissive. It was the same excuse she had used for weeks now. She was always tired, always preoccupied. I wanted to believe her, but something in my gut told me it wasn't just work. I wanted to ask more, but I didn't want to come off as paranoid or needy. She was a grown woman, and I trusted her. That was what I kept telling myself. But then came the little things. It started with how she treated her phone. Rebecca had always been open with me about her messages and social media, but now she was protective of her phone. She would leave it in another room, face down, or if she did leave it on the table, it was always locked. I never liked snooping, but the unease gnawed at me. I tried to ignore it, but the curiosity was overpowering. I kept telling myself I was just being overthinking it, but it felt like I was living in a house where the foundation was starting to crack. Then, one evening, Rebecca went out again with Lisa. I was alone at home, the silence pressing down on me like a heavy weight. My mind kept drifting back to her phone, to the way she had been acting lately. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't proud of it, but I felt like I needed to know what was really going on. I had no idea what I'd find, but I had to see it for myself. I picked up Rebecca's phone from the kitchen counter and stared at it for a moment. I hesitated, then unlocked it. My heart raced as I opened her messages. It was an impulse, I knew it wasn't right, but my curiosity was overpowering. The first few messages were from family members, nothing unusual. But then I saw her conversation with Lisa. At first, I didn't know what to make of it. There were a lot of inside jokes, talk about upcoming plans, but then I saw the flirtatious messages. They were subtle at first, just harmless compliments, teasing one another about their personal lives. But then it escalated. There were private jokes about intimacy, hints at meeting up when no one else would be around, and confessions of desire. My heart sank. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. It was one thing to suspect something was off, but to see it so clearly laid out in front of me was another thing entirely. I skimmed through more messages, unable to stop myself. And there it was, the undeniable truth. Rebecca had been having an affair with Lisa. Her best friend. Someone I had always trusted. Someone I had always thought was a part of our close-knit circle. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. How could this happen? How had I missed it? I felt sick, like my world was falling apart in real time. The woman I had loved, the one I'd spent a decade building a life with, had been living a double life. And worse, the person she had chosen to betray me with was someone I never would have suspected. I had never felt more alone in my life. I put the phone down, my hands shaking. I had so many questions, so many emotions, but above all, I felt betrayed. My stomach twisted in knots, and I could barely breathe. The life I thought I knew, the life I thought I could trust, was shattered in an instant. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to confront Rebecca right then and there, but the other part of me wasn't sure if I could handle hearing the truth from her lips. How could I even begin to process this? How could I ever look at her the same way again? But I knew one thing for sure, everything had changed. The hours that followed my discovery were a blur. I couldn't sit still, pacing around the house like a caged animal. My thoughts were racing, drowning in the flood of emotions coursing through me. Shock, anger, disbelief, they all crashed together, leaving me feeling hollow. I had found the truth, but it felt worse than the lie I had been living in. I kept coming back to the same question, how? How could she do this to me? How could Rebecca, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, betray me like this? It felt unreal, like I was living in someone else's nightmare. But the messages were there, clear as day. They weren't some misunderstanding or miscommunication. No, these were intentional, deliberate words exchanged between two people who were clearly more than just friends. They'd been hiding it from me, from the life we had built. I had always considered Lisa a close friend, someone I trusted with my wife, with our life. She was the one who had been there when we bought our first house, the one who threw us our wedding shower, the one who'd always been part of our inner circle. And now she was the one who had been sleeping with Rebecca behind my back. The betrayal cut deeper with each passing thought. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about everything else, all the years of trust, of shared dreams, of love that I thought was real. How had I been so blind? For the rest of that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at Rebecca's phone, as if expecting more messages to appear, as if the truth would change with each glance. I wanted to confront her then and there, to throw it in her face and demand answers. But part of me wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to hear the words that I knew would break me. The next day, I woke up feeling like I had been hit by a truck. The weight of it all was suffocating. I wanted to scream, to break something, to lash out. But I had learned a long time ago that anger often made things worse. So I tried to stay calm, but inside, I was seething. Rebecca hadn't come home until late the night before, and now she was getting ready for work, completely unaware that I knew everything. The normalcy of it all made me feel sick. She was going about her day like nothing had changed, while everything inside of me was in freefall. As I watched her in the kitchen, making coffee and humming to herself, I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. How could she stand there, so effortlessly, so innocently, after everything? How could she look at me without feeling the weight of her actions? The pain of betrayal cut deeper than any argument, any harsh words could. This wasn't just a fight, this was the end of everything. I had to do it. I couldn't let her go another minute without knowing that I knew. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I had to confront her, no matter how hard it would be. "Rebecca," I said, my voice quiet but firm as I stepped into the kitchen. She looked up, startled, as if I had pulled her from a world she had been lost in. Her eyes widened, and I could see the confusion flicker across her face. "Is everything okay?" she asked, trying to sound casual, though I could see the nervousness in her eyes. It was almost as if she knew what was coming. "Do you want to explain this?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly as I pulled her phone out of my pocket. Her face drained of color when she saw it, and the panic in her eyes was immediate. I didn't wait for her to respond. I showed her the messages, the ones she had exchanged with Lisa, the flirtations, the intimate conversations, the plans to meet up. I could see the blood drain from her face, her hands shaking as she looked at the screen. "George," she whispered, and I could see the guilt flooding her features, her face breaking apart like a fragile vase shattering under the weight of its own truth. "How could you?" I couldn't keep the anger from my voice. It had been building for days, but now it was all coming out. I felt my heart hammering in my chest, a mix of pain and fury threatening to consume me. "How long, Rebecca? How long has this been going on?" "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "It wasn't supposed to happen. It happened." I was confused. I was unhappy, and Lisa, she was there for me. I never meant for it to go this far. I never wanted to hurt you, George. I love you. The words she said felt empty, like echoes of things I once believed. I had heard apologies before, and I knew the weight of them. But this wasn't just an apology. This was a confession, and I wasn't sure if I could believe her anymore. "You love me?" I laughed bitterly, though there was no humor in it. "You love me, and you do this to me? With her? With Lisa?" Rebecca's eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy. Not now. Not when everything felt like it was collapsing around me. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. "I never meant to hurt you. I don't even know how it happened. But I knew how it happened. It didn't matter how or why. The truth was clear. She had chosen to betray me. And in that moment, I knew that everything had changed forever. The silence that filled the room after Rebecca's admission felt like a heavy blanket suffocating me. I stood there, staring at her as the weight of everything hit me all at once. I had never imagined I would find myself here, confronting my wife about something I never thought possible. Yet, here we were. Rebecca's eyes were full of tears, her lips trembling as she tried to speak. But the words didn't come out right. She was apologizing again, repeating the same thing over and over. I'm sorry, George. I never meant for this to happen. I love you. Please understand, I never wanted to hurt you. But those words didn't reach me. They didn't matter anymore. She had crossed a line that couldn't be erased with a few empty apologies. How could I even begin to process this? The anger started to bubble up, sharp and overwhelming. I took a step back, unable to stand still, my heart racing in my chest. You love me? I snapped, the words bursting out of me before I could stop them. Is that what this is? You love me, and yet you. I stopped myself, unable to continue. The pain of betrayal was so intense, I couldn't even find the words. What was the point of arguing anymore? How could we fix this? How could I look at her the same way again? I don't even know who you are anymore, I muttered, my voice quieter now, the weight of what I was feeling overwhelming me. All this time, I thought I knew you. I trusted you, Rebecca. And now you've broken me. Rebecca reached out, her hand trembling as she tried to touch my arm, but I stepped away, not ready for any physical comfort. I couldn't bear it. Her touch felt foreign, wrong. I couldn't let her close, not when the person I thought she was had turned out to be someone else entirely. I know, she said, crying now, her face flushed with guilt and sorrow. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I never wanted to hurt you. It was a mistake, George. A huge mistake. I'm so sorry. Please, just let me explain. But I didn't want to hear explanations. What could she possibly say that would make this any better? There was no excuse for what she had done, no words that could undo the betrayal I was feeling. The damage was done, and I was left here, broken, trying to make sense of the shattered pieces. You don't get it, Rebecca, I said, my voice quieter now, but firm. I can't just forget what you've done. I can't just forgive you like it's nothing. You've betrayed my trust. You've destroyed everything we had. Rebecca shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I know I've ruined everything. I wish I could take it all back. I never meant for it to happen this way. But it had happened. The damage was done, and it was too late for apologies. Too late to undo the hurt she had caused. I had seen the proof with my own eyes, the texts, the messages, the promises of intimacy she had made with Lisa. The lies had been too carefully crafted, too deliberate to be excused. I don't know if I can ever trust you again, I said, the words heavy on my tongue. You've shattered my world, Rebecca. How do I live with that? How do I look at you and pretend everything's okay when I know what's really been going on? Rebecca's hands gripped the sides of her face as she sobbed uncontrollably. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the raw regret. But it wasn't enough. Her tears weren't enough to heal the wound she had caused. And even though I could see the pain in her expression, I knew I couldn't stay here, pretending everything could go back to normal. I stood there, watching her break down, feeling my own heart breaking in the process. This was the woman I had once vowed to spend my life with, and now, everything felt like a lie. The life we had built together was gone. It didn't matter how sorry she was, it didn't matter how much she begged for forgiveness. The trust had been destroyed, and nothing could bring it back. I think we need to be apart, I said, my voice low but resolute. The decision had been brewing for days, but hearing myself say it out loud made it all too real. I can't keep doing this, Rebecca. Not after everything. The words hit her like a physical blow. She looked at me in shock, her eyes wide and filled with disbelief. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this, I continued, my voice steady now, though my insides were torn apart. I need space. I need time to figure out what I want. I can't live like this anymore. Rebecca nodded, her body shaking with grief. I understand, she whispered, her voice so small. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. I didn't know what I expected her to say, but hearing her say those words didn't make it any easier. I felt empty, lost, like the ground beneath me had given way. But the decision was made, and there was no turning back. "I'm leaving," I said quietly, turning toward the door. I had no idea where I would go, but I couldn't stay in this house. Not with the memories, not with the broken pieces of my marriage scattered all around me. I left without another word, not sure what the future held. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in a place that felt like a prison of broken trust. The days following my confrontation with Rebecca felt like they were moving in slow motion. I had left our house, the house we had built together, and I stayed at a friend's apartment for the time being. The decision to leave her wasn't an easy one, but deep down, I knew it was the only option left. The first night away from her was the hardest. I had never imagined our lives would unravel so suddenly. All those years, all those memories, they felt like a distant dream. I kept replaying that moment in the kitchen, the pain in Rebecca's eyes as she realized I knew the truth. I could still hear the shakiness in her voice as she tried to explain herself, but the more I thought about it, the less those words seemed to matter. Nothing could undo what had been done. I spent the next few days in a haze, barely able to focus on anything. My mind kept returning to the same question: why did she do it? I couldn't wrap my head around it. Rebecca and I had shared everything, or so I thought. We had been a team. So how could she betray me with Lisa, someone I trusted completely? I tried to distract myself, throwing myself into work and forcing myself to get out of the apartment. But the weight of the betrayal was always there, lurking just beneath the surface, and I couldn't escape it. Friends and family reached out, but I wasn't ready to talk about it yet. I didn't have the answers to their questions. I didn't even have the answers for myself. The hardest part, though, was the loneliness. I had never felt so isolated. I thought I could handle this on my own, but the emptiness that settled in my chest was a constant reminder of how much had been ripped away from me. It wasn't just Rebecca that I had lost, it was everything. The life I had built, the plans we had made for the future, all of it felt like it had been destroyed in an instant. And then, one evening, I got a call from Rebecca. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. I hadn't spoken to her since the confrontation. Part of me didn't want to pick up, to avoid hearing her voice, but the other part of me needed closure, needed to hear what she had to say. I took a deep breath and answered. "George," her voice cracked, her words trembling. "Can we talk? Please?" I felt the familiar rush of emotion, but I didn't know what I was supposed to say. "I don't know if I can, Rebecca. I don't know what you want from me." "I don't want to lose you," she said, her voice barely audible. "I made a horrible mistake, and I know I can't undo it, but I love you. I've loved you this whole time, and I don't want to lose everything we had." There was silence between us for a moment, and I tried to gather my thoughts. The pain from her betrayal was still raw, and hearing her voice, filled with regret, made me question everything I thought I knew. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," I finally said, my voice tight. "What you did, it broke me. I can't just go back to how things were. I don't even know if I want to." I could hear her sobbing softly on the other end, and my chest tightened with a mix of anger and sadness. Part of me wanted to believe her, to believe that maybe this was just a terrible mistake that could be fixed. But another part of me, the part that had been hurt so deeply, knew that forgiveness wouldn't come easily. "George, please," Rebecca pleaded. "I'm so sorry. I can't fix this, but I want to try. I don't want to be without you. You're my everything." Hearing her beg like that twisted something inside me. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could find our way back. But the truth was, I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. The person I had trusted most in the world had betrayed me, and that kind of wound doesn't heal overnight. "I don't know what the future holds," I said, my voice softer now, but still firm. "But I can't keep going like this. I need time. I need space to figure out who I am without you." The call ended with no resolution, just the sound of her sobs echoing in my mind. It hurt more than anything I had ever experienced, but I knew I was doing the right thing. If there was a chance for us to heal, it wouldn't come from rushing back into each other's arms. It had to come from a place of honesty, of rebuilding trust, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that. Not yet. I spent the next few days trying to figure out what I wanted. Part of me was still angry, part of me was still in love with Rebecca, but I couldn't just ignore the betrayal. The emotional roller coaster of it all left me exhausted, and for the first time, I realized that I had been neglecting myself for so long that I didn't even know who I was anymore. I wasn't ready to make any decisions yet. But I knew I couldn't stay in the same place forever, stuck in this cycle of pain and confusion. I had to make a choice, to heal, to move on, and to reclaim my life, no matter how difficult it might be. It had been weeks since I had left the house. I spent my days in a haze of confusion, trying to make sense of everything that had happened, but the more I thought about it, the more the truth sank in. Things had changed. They couldn't go back to how they were before. I wasn't the same person anymore, and neither was Rebecca. I had tried to keep busy work, meeting with friends, doing whatever I could to distract myself. But the questions kept creeping into my mind. Should I try to work things out with Rebecca? Could we ever repair the trust that had been shattered? Or was it time to move on completely and build a new life, away from the woman I had once loved so deeply? I woke up one morning to the sound of my phone ringing, and I immediately knew who it was before I even looked at the screen. Rebecca had been calling me more frequently in the past week, each time leaving a message, asking if we could talk. I hadn't been ready, but today, something felt different. Maybe it was the exhaustion that had settled in my bones or the constant ache that never seemed to go away, but I decided to pick up. "George," her voice was tentative, almost hesitant. "Can we talk?" I took a deep breath before answering. I knew I couldn't avoid her forever, and part of me, despite everything, still cared for her. But I wasn't sure where to go from here. "I don't know, Rebecca," I replied, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "I don't know what to say anymore." "I know I've hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I've ruined everything. But I've been thinking a lot, about us, about what we had. And I want to try. I want to fix it, if you'll let me." The words hung heavy in the air. Could I forgive her? Could I trust her again? My mind flashed back to all the memories of our life together, the good ones, the ones that made me believe that we were a perfect match. And then I thought about the betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak. How could I ever move past that? "I don't know if I can, Rebecca," I said softly, my voice faltering for the first time. "What you did, it shattered me. You lied to me for months. I don't even know who you are anymore. And I don't know who I am without you either. This has changed everything." There was silence on the other end of the phone. I could hear her breathing, steady but full of pain. "I don't know what to say, George," she whispered. "I wish I could take it all back. I wish I could erase the hurt I've caused you. But I can't. All I can do is ask for your forgiveness and hope you can find it in your heart to give me another chance." Her words felt sincere, but I didn't know if I could trust them. I didn't know if I could trust her. After a long pause, I spoke again, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. "Rebecca, I need time. I need to figure out who I am now. I can't make a decision about us right now. I can't keep going back and forth. I need space." "I understand," she said, her voice small, the sadness in it unmistakable. I love you, George. I'm sorry. And if you ever decide you want to try, I'll be here. I'll be waiting." The call ended, and I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen of my phone. It wasn't that I didn't still love Rebecca. I did. But love wasn't enough to erase the betrayal. It wasn't enough to undo the lies, the secrecy. I had to face the fact that what we had might be gone forever. Over the next few days, I found myself wrestling with the decision. Part of me wanted to give Rebecca another chance. Part of me missed the woman I had fallen in love with, the one who had been my partner, my confidant. But the other part of me knew that I could never go back to a life built on lies. I had to protect my own heart. I spent more time with friends, trying to get out of my head, and slowly, I started to realize something important. I had to heal before I could make any decisions. I couldn't fix things with Rebecca if I hadn't fixed myself first. It wasn't about whether or not we could work things out, it was about reclaiming who I was, finding the version of myself that had been buried beneath the pain of betrayal. And in that process, I realized something even more powerful. I wasn't willing to settle for a life filled with doubt and uncertainty. I deserved more than that. I deserved trust, honesty, and a love that didn't come with strings attached. So, I made the decision. I was moving forward. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight, but I knew it was time to let go of the past and focus on my own future. I didn't call Rebecca right away. I needed to make sure I was certain. When I finally did, I told her the truth. I'm not ready to try again, Rebecca. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I need to be on my own for now. I can't do this. The line was silent for a moment before she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I understand, George. I'm sorry. I hope you find the happiness you deserve. We both knew that the chapter between us had ended, and there was no turning back. It was the hardest decision I'd ever made, but it was the right one. It was time for me to heal. It was time for me to live again. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. And remember, no matter what you're facing, you're not alone. Stay strong, and take things one step at a time.